Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about the OA Part 2.
Finally. We had a very busy weekend. We had a toddler birthday party to run. And,
yes.
I was stripping a lot yesterday. Wallpaper.
Stripping wallpaper. Yes. So, needless to say, we were tired.
Yes. Life happened. Mm-hmm. And so we're apologize for the late episode, but what an episode have we got for you guys, because we're talking about part 2 of the OA, which was, well, we'll get there. We'll get to our review of it.
Yes.
So if you have not yet seen it, obviously spoiler alert. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things that you may or may not have caught in there. Mm-hmm. So I am actually excited. There were moments like our very first episode of the OA, which was like our third episode ever. I had a moment where I woke up in the middle of the night and was like, oh my God, I just figured this out, and had to write it down. It was like 3 a.m. I'm like, had to go down.
Needless to say, he's a little obsessed with the OA.
Well, we'll talk about why here in just a little bit. So, speaking of which, let's get to our review and summary.
Yes.
Our summary and review, rather. Oh, it's a really hard show to summarize.
I know, I'm like, what part do you want to summarize? And then I will summarize the other parts.
Let's summarize with the assumption that people have already seen part 1 of the OA.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do, like, OA reality and then original reality? I'll do original reality. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
So.
Go.
Right after the events of the OA Part 1, where the OA gets shot, she jumps into a parallel dimension in the show. So we're going to try to use dimension throughout the show. We're going to mess up a lot. Don't worry about it.
He's going to mess up a lot.
I'm going to mess up a lot. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, continue.
Prairie discovers that she's jumped into an alternate version of herself where she doesn't experience the traumatic events of the van crash from the very first episode of the OA. If you have not yet seen that episode, why are you watching the second part? So discovers that Hap and the rest of the angels have also jumped into this dimension, and she tries to defeat Hap on her own, but discovers that she needs to become whole with herself.
You totally skipped, like...
Yeah, I know.
There's, like, crime involved, and a detective, and a mystery house.
Yes. Well, I was leaving some for you to summarize.
No, because I was going to do the other half, like,
okay.
back in the original.
All right. Well, there's a young person who goes missing, and there's a detective that is hired to look for this young person who goes missing. And it turns out that this young person is also familiar. How's that? Does that sum it up?
Yeah, sure. As much as we possibly can. Oh, there's a tech company involved too. But
yes.
Yeah. People are like, what?
It's really hard to summarize.
It is hard to summarize. Okay, so I will try to summarize what's happening in the original reality that Prairie or the OA came from. Okay, so immediately after she gets shot, in the original reality, she dies. Okay? And the whole group is like trying to figure out what to do because they're like, we got really close, because of her, but now what do we do now that she's gone, and yada, yada, yada. So they have this feeling that there's something else bigger that they need to do, and they, Steve wants to try to join the OA in the parallel universe, is one of the things. Anyway, so they go on this wild mystery tour. They convince BBA to take them all over the place. The FBI goes after BBA for thinking that she kidnapped the kids. One of the kids ends up committing suicide. Everybody's sad.
Accidentally.
What?
Accidentally.
No, he didn't accidentally commit suicide.
Well,
You don't put that many patches on yourself not knowing what the possibility is. Anyway.
It was a fentanyl overdose.
Yes. So he committed, or he died of suicide, and now it's like really bad because somebody died when she had the kids, and they also go to and figure out where the OA is in the other universe, and they do the moves, and Steve jumps.
Yeah, see?
I tried really hard. I know I skipped a lot of stuff. What did I miss? You fill in the blanks of that side.
Well, quite a bit, especially like each of the kids had their own kind of development. French turns out that he's gay, but
or bisexual. We don't
no,
know
he
yet.
says that he's gay.
Oh, he says he's gay. Okay.
Yeah. There was that whole scene with Steve where Steve was like, "Dude, you totally want me."
Well, yeah. Well, you can here. I mean, he can be bisexual and still.
Well, no, he said, "Well, I'm gay."
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So my review. This is one of those stories that I absolutely adore. There are two specific genres that are my absolute favorite, and obviously
zombies.
No, actually, it's time travel and parallel realities, kind of like those what ifs. This is actually the second time that Britt Manning and Zal Batmanij, Batman guy.
I know. I feel really bad. I need to learn how to pronounce his last name. I have no idea.
This is the second time because they did actually a movie called Other Earth where suddenly like there are two Earths that are somewhat close by because one kind of breaks through the dimension barrier.
This is not about that.
No, but I'm just saying that this is the second time that they've worked on a similar story. And you can tell that they're a little like they're very good at it. They're very good at being able to get a lot of the what ifs, kind of those things. There is a little bit of time travel in this one, but I'll talk about that here in a little bit because I think this all kind of ties into what I'm wanting to talk about, what the theme that I pulled out from this series, and I loved it. I was pretty much obsessed with this season, much more than the first season. This one, like, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was like one of those things that I'm like, oh, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Like, even while I was at work, I listened to audiobooks while I'm at work, and like, I'm still thinking about the OA, and so I kind of get distracted while I'm listening to a book. I'm like, oh, I have no idea what just happened in the book because I was thinking about the OA.
Yeah, it happens.
So I absolutely loved it. Yeah, this is probably one of the best television series that I've seen since the last season of Legion.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I definitely liked it more than part one. For sure. I think part of it was because there was already a mystery involved, and, like, you heard rumors of, like, this is going to be a lot different than part one, which it definitely was. But even though they had
a larger budget.
Yes. There was elements that you liked it in genres that you like, but it also had elements in genres that I like crime mysteries and more crime mysteries. I really like crime mysteries.
I know.
But also too, like, the big bag, like, techie executive, and what does he want with all these kids, and what is he doing with these guys, and that kind of stuff. And so I really like that kind of stuff. And so it really appealed to me. But it was still enough mystery to where I didn't know what was going to happen. Where a lot of crime mysteries, you kind of know. You've seen enough of them to where you're like, it's going to go one of two ways. This, I had no idea. I mean...
Well, there's still a lot of unanswered questions from it as well.
Well, and also, too, like, what's going to happen with that detective? Like, are we going to find out more about, like, what is happening to him? Like, in part 3? Like, because I want to know. I mean, that's kind of a big life-changing experience for him to just, grab Michelle, aka Puck, like back over the universe back over to their universe.
To their universe. Yeah, where
she's currently in our universe.
They may have jumped to our universe where Britt Manning is Britt Manning.
Yep.
And that left a pretty big cliffhanger there for season 3, for part 3, which I think they have said that they have planned it out storyline for 5 seasons, for 5 full seasons.
I really want to know what's going to happen to BB-8, because if she's still stuck over there.
Well, BB-8 didn't jump. Like, if she's still in the...
Well, we don't know if she didn't jump.
The prime reality?
We just didn't see her jump.
Yeah. We saw Steve, which also maybe Homer. We're a little confusing on that.
Yeah. Because how does he know that he's Hap if he's never seen him before?
Exactly.
But anyway, maybe that's part of the mystery of part 3. Sorry, we're just going to keep going. We are going to waste half of our time just talking about how great it is. But
yeah. And I am going to try to pack as much information into a conversational style here in the next 15 minutes. And so I'm going to try to do my best here. So I apologize if I leave things out, but I've got a lot.
Well, that's why we'll probably do another episode on this, because there was a lot to go over.
Yeah, we're going to go episode by episode. And I am going to be pulling things in from the first episode and the last episode and from different parts of the full kind of series.
Yes.
So I want to start with the reason why I love things like this. And I think it's because of the fact that I grew up with the Chronicles of Narnia. And I grew up with these other worlds that I wished that I could be a part of. And it was because it was, for me, a way to escape kind of the torment of some of the things that were happening to me when I was a child, being bullied and just the horribleness of, the things of not knowing who I was and not, trying to figure out who I was and thinking I'm this hero and other things like this. And so I would always dream of these what ifs. What if, just this one thing was different? What if? And these stories really bring that to light. And we have some instances of these strange things happening in our own world, which, granted, a lot of them are just stories. They're all anecdotal. There's nothing that has any objective evidence to it. Mm-hmm. For instance, there is The Man from Torrid, which is one of the most popular stories of a businessman who travels to Tokyo. And he claims his documentation and everything else is from this country called Torrid, which does not exist in our reality.
No, he points to another country that's actually on the map and calls it Torrid, but it's not Torrid.
It's Andorra.
Yeah.
In our reality. There's a similar story of the boy from Lexaria, a boy from Lisbia, which is not Lisbon, but Lisbia, and he didn't speak a lick of Portuguese. But one of the most compelling stories is from Lorena Garcia Gordo from Spain. And this 42-year-old woman talks about in 2008 that she woke up one morning and she had completely different bed sheets that she was like, these aren't the sheets that I went to bed with. She goes to work in the morning and finds out that...
she tries to go to work.
And discovers that her office isn't her office anymore. And she doesn't recognize anybody on her floor. She thinks she got off on the wrong floor. Discovers it actually is her floor. And that the guy that she's dating, she broke up with like months ago. She was actually dating somebody else from her neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And there are all of these these differences in her life that... going into it more, she does have clothes that she doesn't even remember purchasing, which is very much like this story, which is very compelling. A lot of people say that she may have had Capgras syndrome or may have had some kind of mental illness.
But the thing with her is that there's so many similarities to, it wasn't like her world was completely turned upside down. like she still knew people, like she knew like her family was all the same.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
you know, like her house itself was still the same. So there was still enough similarities to where that's why it was weird. It's not like she completely forgot everything, you know?
It's almost like a sliding doors moment. If you watch the movie, I think it was in the 90s that it came out with Gwyneth Paltrow. There's also, kind of Run Lola Run has kind of that same kind of genre, kind of what ifs. Something happened, like 3 seconds had gone by rather than, going right away. Which, I'm compelled by these stories because it's kind of like, well, there is this big, large theory of the multiverse, and what would be different if you had just done, just something a little differently. And I think this is something that philosophers have thought about for a very long time. And, even the big names in psychology, such as Carl Jung, he had this idea of individualism, which is stated as the achievement of self-actualization through a process of integrating the conscious and the subconscious of the unconscious, which really plays the theme of what I saw in part 2 here, is that with all of these ideas that I had of what ifs, that instead of just thinking what if, trying to see myself as that person and being that. And I think that through processes in my own life, I've really discovered that being here in the moment, being here with my family, being with you and with our son, that it really brings me to a place where I'm whole, to a place where I can be one in that self, where I'm a unified in that sense of individualism, that I'm whole. Do you feel like you have those instances where you like maybe say what if about your own life, and you think a lot about, well, I'm a daydreamer, admittedly. Do you have those moments where you daydream a little bit about what your life could have been like if you just did something differently?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I feel like a lot of times, in my personal opinion, that it feels like it's a little bit of a waste of time.
All right.
Because what's the point? I mean, it didn't happen. I have the life that I'm in right now.
Well, for me, it was very different growing up, and that was one of those things that I did to pass the time, was to think about what if this had gone differently. And I think it probably has a lot to do with my generalized anxiety disorder.
Probably, yeah.
Is I overthink everything. And so I think that maybe that has a little bit to do with it, but I really feel that people who do this aren't exactly, well, a lot of main society sees them as mentally ill.
Wait, for just asking
for people who and spend a lot of time dwelling in other worlds, in other words, that they spend a lot of time thinking about those what ifs and those other worlds, and
I would say that people think that they're flighty, but I don't think that the world sees them as being mentally ill.
I would differ on that a little bit. I think that they do, because I think a lot of times that that's the way it gets portrayed in popular culture. That when anybody kind of drifts off or is, kind of more distant and in their own little world, is what people describe it as oftentimes. That oftentimes they're portrayed as being mentally ill.
I still don't think I see that very much as my own personal thing, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna, ask you, do you see that very much? So, you just answered the question.
No, I don't see that very much. But I also think because maybe I understand that is not. It might be a symptom of being. Maybe have some kind of diagnosis, but that doesn't mean that you have that diagnosis because everybody daydreams.
Yeah.
Everybody asks the what if. That doesn't mean that you are like have to be diagnosed with anything because it's just something common that people do to pass the time when they're bored. I feel like not as many people do it nowadays because we're constantly entertained with our phones and with our screens, and we have so much other like entertainment options to where it's not as common for most people anymore. So maybe that's why people see it as being odd, because why are you daydreaming when you can open up your phone and watch a YouTube video, you know?
Yeah. Whereas it's sort of a form of meditation and sort of a form of self-purification, or at least it has been seen as such for people like Maslow. If you're unfamiliar with it, Maslow created the hierarchy of needs that...
if you ever took a psychology class.
Yeah. You've probably heard about it. He's got different levels, which starting from the physiological, which is, basic stuff like breathing, food, water, sex, stuff like that, to safety, which is security, security of employment, of resources, just safety. Love and belonging.
And essential packs?
Yeah, and essential packs. Friendship, family, sexual intimacy. Esteem is the next level, which is self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. And then the pinnacle of all of that is self-actualization, where, you've got morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving. And in this, Maslow really kind of saw those things like meditation and the self-purification process. Now, this is something that oftentimes is handled by spirituality groups. This is something that, at least most religious groups should be focusing on. The Western Church kind of got away from it.
Are you talking about self-actualization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not in the way that, that it's a secret. Like the secret.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like, for example, Harry Potter and the Sacred Text, they do, in the part of their spiritual readings, they have different practices that they use for the spiritual readings that help you realize deeper meaning within the text.
Exactly.
So it's like realizing deeper meaning within yourself. How deep?
Yeah, which you see this throughout the season with the game. The game for all of these people, it was a method of moving inside of themselves.
Well, you also got money.
Well, yeah, you also got money, but that was the motivation for them to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas Maslow, the motivation was the self-actualization, that becoming a whole person, and for each of these characters, I think each of them had their own process of really finding their own process to that self-actualization. Now, this is something that I disagree with. I don't really feel like there are stages, but what do you feel like? Do you feel like Maslow was kind of on to something that people have to start with the stage and then move on to the next stage, or?
No, I don't think so. Because there's certain parts of his pyramid where you can live without, but still feel like you're a whole person. Like, for example, there's sex, for example. There's a whole group of people in multiple different cultures who have decided that they're going to abstain from sex. Plus, also, you have different sexual orientations of people who just aren't interested in sex, period. Mm-hmm. But they're still a whole person, they're not troubled or anything. So that's just like one example of he put sex on like the very bottom. So in theory, according to him, you take that away and the whole pyramid like crumbles on top of itself.
Yeah, a lot of psychologists have issues with sex.
Well, Freud,
Carl Jung.
Well, and a lot of psychologists have, taken the hierarchy of needs from Maslow and just sort of like, I mean, he might have been onto something, but it's not set in stone.
Well, yeah, and I think that throughout our life, we all have our needs change. Mm-hmm. Our needs, our wants change, and I think this is something that I'm going to use. There is a great interview from Ian Alexander, who plays Michelle and Buck. That talking about their personal gender identity and how they wanted to make sure that they were comfortable with playing both female and the masculine, transmasculine.
The
parts.
Director.
Yeah.
Asked. The actor.
Sorry, I'm trying to make sure that my pronouns are correct.
No, I know, but you're saying
saying the to them
exactly.
too many times.
Yeah. So the director, to make clear,
yes,
asked the actor whether or not the actor was comfortable with playing different spectrums.
Yes,
of
gender identity.
Gender identity. Yes, I got it. I did it for you. There you go.
Good job. Thank you. And so I really feel like there was a line that Ian Alexander had said during this interview was that right now I'm comfortable in my own gender identity. I'm comfortable with my own dysmorphia is what they said. And I think this is very true about the entire season of the show, and I think this is very evident in the journey for the detective. And I should have written down the detective's name, but the detective he found like the very first episode he finds Michelle's drawings.
There it is.
Kareem found Michelle's drawings in the house, and one of the drawings that Michelle had made in the process of the game was a labyrinth. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with labyrinths or not. We've talked about this a lot during our Westworld episode, because Westworld, that was a primary picture throughout the entire season, was that center of the maze. About moving towards the center of the maze, which is where one finds oneself. Mm-hmm. That's what labyrinths were made to do. Of encountering for them what they saw as God in the center of the maze. For the person who came up with the bicameral mind, for him it was like, oh, God is just ourselves talking to ourselves, our subconscious talking to our conscious minds. And for Carl Jung, this is very much that individuation. It's becoming the one that is you. And I think this is very much the theme, especially when the traveler speaks to the OA in the 3Y bar, really saying that no, you've got to let Nina out. You've got to let become one with Nina, rather than trying to force her down. That when you become integrated with yourself, that you really become whole. Mm-hmm. And she became more than the sum of her parts. And I think this is true for us as human beings, that we're trying to find the center of who we are, so that we can be much better about ourselves. And this is why I loved this. This is why I love this series. There was so much that was in there, that was packed in there, that kind of talk about this, especially with Homer not remembering himself, that his psychologist consciousness was stronger than the Homer consciousness, and that it put it to sleep, the Homer consciousness.
Well, I feel like the Homer that was the original Homer that we have met is definitely a more gentle soul and more, I guess, self-aware. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is, I guess, can sometimes be easier to push somebody down if the other personality is like just literally more dominant, in their nature.
But that is something that I just absolutely love. And of course, this plays along with a lot of the things that I've already talked about, this season, and especially with our previous seasons, we talked about grief, and this is, I think, is more moving on from that and saying, don't let that take you down. Mm-hmm. Become one with those what ifs. Become one with those things, and realize that pain. Let it become a part of you rather than letting it dominate you. So anyway, I tried to pack everything I could into all that short amount of time.
Okay. You did good. Good job, Miguel.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to move on to something a little bit more easier for us non-academics to understand.
Sorry, I wanted to go into the T.S. Eliot poem and the Nazca lines and the life tree, but those are all things that I had to put aside.
That's okay. All right. So another big common theme, I think more in part 2 than it was in part 1, is the whole needing to be believed aspect. Yes, there was a little bit in part 1, but it wasn't so strong, I guess, because the kids in BBA were more led, into, believing her, whereas the OA and other characters are literally screaming, no, you gotta believe me. And nobody does. Absolutely nobody does. So for example, with OA and I put OA and the original gang.
The original gang.
Trying to convince Homer that their story is real.
Well, not so much Renata, but Scott and Rachel.
Yeah, well, I'll get to Renata later. So, but that's obviously that's the big main storyline there. But then also you get, the fact that BB-8 is trying to convince people that she did not kidnap these kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad for BB-8.
I'm just why didn't the kids just pick up the phone and just say, Mom and Dad, I'm okay?
Yeah, we actually kidnapped BB-8.
Well, I think part of it, too, is that we learned that after the incident, people assumed that they were all part of this cult.
Yeah.
For some reason. What kind of cult, does dances? But whatever. Synchronized dances to that. So there was the whole BB-8 trying to convince her cousin that, I did not kidnap them. We're not in some kind of cult. Everything is fine. This is a big misunderstanding. And then there's Steve trying to convince all of the teens in BBA that he feels wholeheartedly he knows that OA is alive. He just feels it and he knows it. And of course, everybody else saw what happened with their eyes and they're no, it's impossible. But then of course, throughout the story, they all become convinced that that's exactly what happened. Mm-hmm. And then we learned that BBA, she was I kind of had that feeling all along.
Yeah.
But she was just kind of too afraid to voice it because she's BBA.
Her intuition is more of a power rather than a just feelings.
Yeah, because it's more than just I feel like this person is alive. It's more of a I feel where this person is.
Yeah,
kind of a thing, which can also kind of connect with the medium world and that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to go into that because I have feelings about that. Anyway.
The medium in the show, really came across as a quack, but that was just me.
A little bit, but then it was almost as if she believed in the BS that she was selling. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which sometimes you kind of have to do that anyway. Mm-hmm. But so when have you tried to convince somebody to believe you, and it was just basically talking to a wall?
It's a story of my life. I'm going to say this is something that's a daily occurrence that, I do have credibility. You are talking to somebody who works in insurance. I do know what I'm talking about. I am highly trained in what I'm talking about.
Much more time experience than the average person does.
Yeah, I talk about insurance all day long, so you should believe me. Mm-hmm. Whereas, people are more inclined to believe themselves because they want to get what they want.
Yeah. Or their neighbor. Like,
Yeah.
my neighbor told me blah, blah, blah. And you're like, well, no.
My neighbor's got a better rate. Well, your neighbor hasn't been in 3 accidents.
Exactly. So for me, I have a little bit of a story to tell. I don't know if I've told you. I think I've told you the story before. The one thing that comes to mind, like really specifically to mind, is I was probably about 9 or 10, and there was a huge snowstorm, and my dad had just shoveled off the driveway, and so there was a huge pile of snow, like off to the side. And my little sister and I and a neighbor kid decided that we're just going to take this pile of snow and make it into an igloo. It's already the shape of an igloo. Let's just make it into one. And so, we slowly started to we tried to pack it down first, and then we slowly started to dig out the snow and that kind of stuff. And it got pretty good. We were pretty close. And my little sister was in there trying to get some more snow out, and the snow, it just caved in on her. And I laugh at it now because just imagining it back in my head, the snow was on top of her, and you just see her 2 little feet in her bright pink snowsuit from the 90s, just kicking her legs. And the neighbor boy was screaming on the top of his lungs. I just was okay, I'll go get mom. So I just calmly walk inside. This is no big deal. And I'm like, hey mom, yeah, we need some help. Kaylee is stuck under some snow. And my mom was like, whatever. She just ignores me. And then I just go back out, and a neighbor ends up coming out and helping us dig out Kaylee. And so finally I'm like, we need some more help. So I go inside. I'm like, Mom, Dad, we need your help. Come on. Kaylee is underneath all this snow. My mom finally hears the neighbor kid screaming and then decides that she was going to believe me and come out and help rescue my little sister.
Yeah, that happens.
I'm just she's like, yeah, but you came in so calmly the first time. I'm like, yeah, because I thought you would come out in a good matter of time. I'm just glad that the random neighbor decided to come out and help rescue my little sister. I shouldn't laugh about this. She probably would have been fine, but anyway. So back to Renata, just really briefly, since you mentioned her as well. She reminded me of someone who maybe had experienced gaslighting, because she comes to this universe with these memories, knowing what she knows is true, and Homer convinces her, Homer, him as a doctor, I can't remember what he called himself, doctor whatever,
Dr. Roberts.
Yeah, Dr. Roberts had thoroughly convinced her that she was crazy, that's not true, this reality is true, what you had experienced is completely wrong and not true. So, have you yourself experienced or witnessed any gaslighting yourself?
I would say that I was more of a perpetrator of it, but I think it's more when I was growing up, a lot of what the church had told me, that this is what's reality. And, looking back on it now, it's not really what reality was. And I think it's, that's one of the reasons why I feel like I was more of a perpetrator of it, was that, I perpetrated that lie that was told to me when I was young.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, so you might have been a perpetrator, but would it be true to say that maybe you were also gaslit?
Yes.
Excuse me.
That's what I was saying, was that
yeah.
that I was a victim of it, but I continued it.
Yeah. Yep, I hear you.
I didn't break the cycle until recently.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I feel like it's very common just for women in general for this to be the case. Even just small things, you don't realize that it is gaslighting until you look back on it and you're just like, wait, that's not what happened. And it can be like anything, just small things, just maybe something at work like, oh yeah, no, you didn't think of that. It was, so-and-so who thought of that.
Yeah.
Even something like that can be considered gaslighting. And I've definitely had that experience myself. And it does kind of make you question your sanity. And it really sucks because you're like, no, I'm insistent that this is what happened. And they just kind of push you down and say, nope, this is what happened. You're crazy. That didn't happen. Why would you think that happened? And it just sucks.
Yeah.
It just really just sucks.
Well, we've kind of run out of time. So I know that you've got another point, but we're also going to be talking about the OA part 2.
Yeah, it was just about the house. There was so much about the house. We could just have a whole episode about
well, yeah, and
the house.
The house is a big part of it, so we'll be talking about more about it in our other episodes.
Well, one thing I want to kind of ask, like maybe instead of doing like episode by episode, maybe we do that. We talk about the house, or we talk about,
Yeah, each individual thing. Maybe we'll talk about more off the air.
Okay.
Anyway, if you want to talk more about the OA Part 2, please let us know. You know where to find us. We are on Facebook and on Instagram as Patron Saints of Pop Culture. You can also find us on our website, thehonestfaith.com. And with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.